can I just start off with the agenda, and then we'll have a chat at the end. So we start off with apologies for absence. We got anything on anything from any apologies?
None provided to me, Chair, prior to the meeting.
Okay, that's brilliant. Brilliant, Gareth. Okay. Item 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of December. Everyone happy with the minutes? I take it the silence is yes.
Yeah.
Okay. 3. Do you receive declarations of interest? Have we got anybody who has any interest to declare in the meeting? Again, silence I'll take as no. So that's no declaration of interest. We have 2 reports on the agenda today. The first one is the overview and update of the service. Dave, would you do this a kindness of taking us through that, please?
I will, Chair. For the last time, I will take you through the SRS update report. I'll start at clause 2.1 if I can, which is just to give you an update on the attendance levels or sickness absence for the service. You'll see our short term is consistent with last year. Our long-term absences have gone up a little bit. I've alluded to that further down the paragraph about some challenging health conditions for certain officers. Helen and I have been through those. We are comfortable that there are no discernible trends, and it just is where it is at the moment with certain individuals. I flagged to you that we continue to have challenges around recruitment, the demands being placed upon us because of coronavirus, and all those issues are still impacting on the service. I know a lot of people think coronavirus is finished. It hasn't. We'll talk again in a few moments about the numbers going up. So the SRS is under some pressure. We have seen a number of officers leave again. Christina particularly impacted in the food hygiene field, but we're optimistic we can make some appointments in the next couple of days. But it's a tough job at the moment, Chair, with the demands being placed on the service. You know, we face perhaps another pull on us in terms of the housing some of the Ukraine refugees and looking at some of the houses that they may or may not go into. An additional pull that we hadn't expected, all of which is going to impact our end of year performance. So a tough year really, Chair, for SRS officers, but you know, if you look at those attendance stats, they bear up really well when measured against other services, and again a testament to the brilliant people that work in the SRS. So I'll pause there, Chair, on HR issues. I don't know if there are any questions.
Yeah, any questions to Dave?
Okay, Chair, so I'll go on and look at the financial position. At the moment, at the end of Q3, so that's up to December 2021, we are looking at an underspend of 117,000. That really is about staff vacancies, as we've talked about. We are spending lots of other people's money. We are spending money that is given to us through grants and the like through Welsh Government for the coronavirus enforcement and some of the other works through TTP. But our base budget is showing an underspend, and that's primarily due to those vacancies. Our accountant, I believe Claire James, is on the call and could take any more detailed questions, Chair, if there are any.
I see Councillor Patel has a hand up, Chair.
Dashina, off you go. Sorry.
Should I just go? It's probably not a detailed accountant question, but it is about personnel. So I understand that there are vacancies, and I just wondered if we'd like how we'll, like, I know we've discussed it a number of times, but how we're looking on that. Like, like what sort of creative methods are we looking at in terms of recruitment? Because I remember we talked about students. I just wanted an update on that, and also agency staff. I'm just aware of the pressure on staff that are continuing to stay with us and picking up the additional work, and obviously they get to a point with where that's, you know, it was temporary and it's now becoming a bit more mid to long term, and I just wanted to ask about that aspect.
Okay.
Yeah, I think some of it is touched upon in the next report with the recruiting. But Dave, can you give some assurance to Sheena, please?
Yeah, Chair, I will do my best to pick up some of those issues. So, Councillor, we are losing officers. One of the interesting things as we lose some people is that they are going to work in the local authority that they now live in, which is an interesting departure from previous years where nobody particularly wanted to work on the patch that they lived in, particularly for things like food hygiene inspections and trading standards interventions and things like that. So we've seen that happen. Your question around students, those students that joined us in 2021, a number of them are now permanent members of staff. A number of them finished their studies in June, and we are hoping to be able to attract them into the service. At the Cardiff scrutiny last month, we were challenged to demonstrate that we are doing all we can to recruit people into the service. I think there was a feeling that maybe we weren't trying hard enough. So I am pulling together some information to show that we have gone external in our adverts. We've gone to specialist recruitment agencies, but it's tough. The SRS is a busy place to work, and a number of people who have left the service say to us they enjoy working here, but it's busy. And if I can get the same money for doing slightly less work, then maybe that's more attractive to them. Christina will talk to you in due course about our work on test, trace and protect and how that is starting to change. And we are looking to bring in a number of what the TTP organisation calls super tracers. These are the very best in TTP that we are looking to move into the SRS with a view to holding them onto them permanently. They are people who've been forged in the fire of coronavirus over the last 2 years and have proved themselves to be the best in class. And Chris and Helen are very keen next year to bring them into the service as best we can. So it's a mixed picture at the moment, I think, Councillor. We are in a bit of a fluid state, and I think it probably reflects where we were in early 2016, where we had to bring in a cohort of new people. And quietly they, over the last 4 years, have come through the service, and some of them have progressed really well, but have moved on. We've trained them exceptionally well. They have become best in class and have been poached. It's a bit like, I feel like something with a bit like Southampton Football Club. They produce fantastic footballers and then the bigger clubs steal them. But that process starts again, I think, and Councillor Michael is right. In the second paper to this committee, you'll see that we're trying to deal with that nationally as well. We're not alone, but it is a challenge for us at the moment. So I think Helen, Chris, Jason will have a challenge ahead of them, but I think it's not insurmountable. And I think the SRS will recruit some more people over the next 6 months that will be a real asset to the service. So sorry, Councillor, a bit of a ramble, but did I answer the question?
You answered the question. We'll answer more of the question on the next paper, but before that, I see Councillor Norma Mackey's got a hand up. I know she was having difficulty in coming on. Norma?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was really on the same thing, but whether it should be left for the next session. I mean, I was wondering, we don't want to go into the same thing again, really, that we recruit and we train and we lose them. And I was wondering, whether we could have maybe a report on exit interviews, about the reasons why, the real reason, that from their words, why they go in, and and maybe ask the questions on those exit interviews. Is there anything we can do to keep you? Yeah. Because otherwise we're going to repeat this over and over again, and other people are getting the benefit. and we are getting the cost.
Yes. Yeah.
So I just think we need to maybe delve a little bit deeper and, try and do what we can to get people to stay, even if it means, and if we are working people too hard, then we have to look at that as well. It might be that we need to employ more people.
I think Norma makes a good, valuable point there. Councillor Patel, is that an old hand or is it a new hand?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to come in and support
Yeah.
Councillor Mackie on what she said. I think it is important, and if we are carrying an overspend, like maybe it's potential, and if someone said it was, they got paid more money somewhere else, is there potential for us to look at that? Because it is a quick fix and it helps us greatly to help, keep the public safe, and it's not, I don't think it's much to ask, especially as we are carrying overspends and it is related to staff vacancy, so it's not even like it's coming from a different area.
I think there's a serious point in there, linking it with the next paper on looking at recruiting staff and apprenticeships, which is something that hasn't been done in this area before, and I think the newness of SRS has proved the effectiveness of the job it does. I think it may be well worth in the next session where we get a paper to actually report on exactly what both Councillors Patel and Mackie said, but also the next stages of SRS. It's now bedded down, it's now settled down, and we've been given constantly more and more work to do with the same amount of staff and the same amount of expertise. Is it time to expand SRS and the job we do? I know that's a different conversation with the council leaders after the election, but I think it's something we should look at.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave, anything to add?
Well, the challenge is a national one, Councillor, and I don't just mean in Wales, but in England as well. There is a shortage of qualified officers. The professional associations perhaps don't have their training mechanisms as nimble and as agile as they should be. Just for example, the Gwent authorities across Gwent, the 5 councils there, have had approximately £1 million invested in their public protection for this next coming financial year, and we know they are going to advertise roles, and we suspect we may lose a couple of more officers into that mix as well. To be fair, the Vale of Glamorgan as the employing authority have allowed us to flex and go outside the traditional recruitment routes and roles. The Vale have been excellent in that, allowing us to advertise here and there, use different mechanisms to try and bring people in. But the SRS is a busy place and a real challenge, and I wouldn't say we burn people out. That isn't right, but it is. We get our money's worth from our officers, and they perform fantastically well. I have to say, they do. But it's a challenge that Helen and Chris and Will and Jason will, I'm sure, can deal with.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's settled down well. I think the next paper is really important. The fact that it's been recognised by Welsh Government and the recruitment problems we have, and they're willing to do something about it. I do think there needs to be more connection with the colleges, with the universities as well. So we have bona fide courses there that people can come straight from. We've had difficulties trying to get them to link in with us there. So anything else, Dave, on this for?
Yeah, well, just to come back on that university point, the cohort in Cardiff University at the moment, they're spread across 3 years. I would estimate that over 65% of them have spent time in the SRS in the last 12 months. So they will have had a feel for the service, and we know that a number of them are quite keen to join us on a permanent basis when they qualify. So that's, there are some good things. That said, Christina in particular has a challenge around food hygiene and competency, which means that they don't grow on trees, these people. So we may have to recruit people who don't have the requisite skills and train them in-house for 6 to 9 months before they can get out and do those higher risk food inspections for us. So it's something of a conundrum, but I'm sure Mrs. Picton will resolve it.
Well, I think Mrs. Picton should be the first to actually call a meeting with the 3 new leaders of the authorities, whoever they are, and have a discussion on possibly changing some of the work we do. I see Councillor Thomas has got his hand up. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a question for Dave about using contract workers for doing inspections. I know you do. Is there any more scope for doing that, or are you doing as much as you sort of can along those lines? I know I had a farm inspection last week, and it was a gentleman from Lincolnshire who was contracted to the council, so a couple of days a week, I think, doing inspections. So just wondering about that.
Yes, Councillor, so we do use agency officers where appropriate, but they do cost us a lot of money. And I'm being recorded, aren't I? So some of the people available to us are variable in terms of the quality of work that they might do. And one thing, again, I focus on food hygiene. One thing Chris and I have been clear about is we want the best people. We cannot afford to have any mistakes in the world of food hygiene. Councillors at Bridgend will remember Tudor meats. That is not going to happen in the SRS region again. And we're adamant about that. You know, to work in the SRS, you need to be good at what you do. And Chris has put her camera on, and hopefully she's going to nod and agree with me.
Would it be okay if I come in there as well, just to give some assurance in terms of the contractors? So yes, you're right, Councillor Thomas. You know, there is a place for contractors in our area, but David is also quite correct in what he's saying in terms of the quality of inspections is really important to us. So there is a validation process that we go through before we let anybody loose on our patch. We undertake sort of shadow visits with them to make sure that the visits are of a quality standard, and of course everything legislatively is covered in their inspections. Now, what we are seeing from the contractor's perspective over the last 2 years is nearly every authority in Wales are using contractors, and so the rates have gone up considerably, almost to a point where it's no longer value for money for authorities anymore. So I think there's a public purse element here as well, in terms of making sure, are the rates that we are paying, are they truly value for money, and are they appropriate for the work that they're carrying out? So in food in particular, what we've adopted is, rather than paying per hour, we are paying per inspection, and we're also putting a limit on the number of inspections those contractors can do a day. Again, ensuring that quality inspection is there and that we're not going to have any mistakes out there whilst they're in the field doing their work.
Okay, thanks very much. That's reassuring.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, any more questions for Dave or Chris or Helen? Anybody? No, Dave?
So Chair, I guess we're seamlessly moving into paragraph 2.5 around performance monitoring. So once again, those traditional metrics that we have used down the years are set out for you in Appendix 2. And in Appendix 3, we've given you some of the broader range of COVID-related enforcement work. I guess into Q1 next year, Helen may well be giving you some performance metrics on inspections of private rented accommodation for people seeking sanctuary from what's going on in the Ukraine. They're all set out in the appendix. High-risk businesses, figures and new businesses are the focus for us in that realm, and some of the other work has not been accorded the same priority. That is in accord with the FSA, the Food Standards Agency, and Christina met them last month, had an update with them, and I believe the FSA are comfortable at the moment with where the SRS is in terms of its performance and the resource it has at the moment to deal with those challenges. So, Chair, if there's anything on the performance, I'm happy to try and answer that along with the colleagues on the call.
No, I'm happy with that. Committee, any questions about performance? No, I think taking into account the situation we've had over the last few years, it's where you would expect the indexes to be. Okay, back to you, Dave.
Okay, so Chair, paragraphs 2.6 to 2.9 really just give you a short chronology of coronavirus. And if you ever have a moment to go back and look at my reports over the last 2 years, every one of these update reports has given you that chronology, lest you forget all the strange things that have happened to us over the years. So I'm just flagging to you here that obviously since last we reported to you, the Omicron virus or variant of coronavirus has kicked in. It caused more changes, more restrictions. Those are quietly being undone as we speak. And further on in the report, you will see the Welsh Government's intended transition plan. I understand tomorrow the First Minister will confirm whether or not that plan remains on course or intact. At the moment, the numbers are rising all over Wales, and we are seeing infection rates that are concurrent with what we were seeing in the middle of January. We are not seeing the hospital admissions that we have with previous variants, but the transmission of this coronavirus variant, BA1 and BA2, is quite significant. So we are seeing 1,000 cases a day in Cardiff and the Vale, and a rise in the Bridgend area as well. That is difficult to determine where it's coming from. It's clearly community transmission. And while Christina and colleagues will do work now in business premises to make sure that they are safe to return to work, we'll work with employers, we'll work with the trade unions, community transmission is on the up. In paragraph 2.10, I'm going to invite Chris to come in here in a moment. Our work supporting the test, trace and protect regime continues. I met this morning with the leaders of Cardiff Council and the Vale Council to talk about the Cardiff and Vale Health Board position. Very keen that the SRS stays in the game, working with public health partners. Conversations we've had with Cwmtaf Morgannwg, with RCT Merthyr, means we will be doing the same thing to make sure that Bridgend is properly resourced and properly protected. But TTP is being scaled down, and Christina is working with different partners to understand how that impacts what we do and what we can do going forward in terms of a proactive regime. So Chris, do you want to pick up that?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Dave. So, yeah, Dave is right. TTP and the traditional tracing element is being scaled down. But of course, our involvement in SRS is really the high risk settings area. So our sort of social care, care homes, domiciliary care and so on. And of course, the last 2 years, we've been very much involved in dealing with those cluster investigations where we're seeing multiple cases at specific locations and really preventing further spread. So our work in terms of those high risk settings will obviously continue. That will still very much be there. But as Dave alluded to, we are having a slight change in sort of operational activity in that those individuals employed by the TTP service, the ones classed as the very best, very talented individuals, are joining us. And we're really keen to build on the skill set that they've learned, and they will now be undertaking the sort of first tier advice in those settings, and we will be sort of hand-holding and leading them along to ensure that work is done. The result of those individuals coming over does mean that we can release some of our staff who are currently doing that work. So thinking specifically our communicable disease and health and safety team, they will be released to do their other work, and they'll be very, very glad to get on with that other work. And of course, our other issues for the business plan, that they'll be able to do that work. But we will have a dedicated team, still very much committed to the prevention and spread of TTP, but very much focused on those high risk settings. Now, we are obviously very aware that in the future a new variant could come in. We're very much anticipating that come winter work will escalate again, and in preparation for that, the teams will be working with businesses or those premises that have been deemed as high risk COVID transmission settings, ones that we've learned that information, we have that intelligence on from the last 2 years, and we'll work with them to advise, guide, make an assessment on risk assessments, really to do that prevention and preparatory work in readiness for potentially what is another harsh winter to come. So I think all testament to all the staff who've been involved in the TTP service, from the JET teams all through to obviously the clinical leads and those dealing with care homes. They've really played their part in terms of protecting the public and preventing spread, but there's still work there to be done. And of course, there's some staff from the service will remain in that TTP service at least until the end of June and likely thereafter. So I hope that provides you with enough of an update as to our operational activity going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for that. I think it's a fair point that we build up a huge expertise in the team in this, and I'm pretty sure with the infection rates now and with winter coming, they'll be called upon again, just in case we got any variants. And it's something none of us are aware. We're not in a position to actually predict what may or may not happen. But I think our thanks should go to the staff, particularly for the last couple of years. They've done an incredible job. Dave?
So, Chair, the good news for you is I'm not going to say anything else on this report. I'm going to hand to Helen, and then Helen will coordinate with Will and Jason to conclude the report with you.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Helen?
Thank you, Dave. Okay, so I think we've come to the end now of the section on test, trace and protect. And 2.12 there, Dave has given an update on really what comes next. And of course, we will be waiting with interest to see what the First Minister announces later in the week, exactly what steps come next, or whether there is any slowing down of the release of restrictions. So moving down through the overview and update report, at 2.13, we wanted to make you aware of a report which has been released. A little bit of background: the Association of Chief Trading Standards Officers, or ACTSO for short, represents trading standard services across England and Wales. And since 2018, they've produced or they've created a really helpful resource. It's known as the Impacts and Outcomes Framework. And it's a way of demonstrating just that, the impact of trading standard services for communities and businesses and everyone across England and Wales. And I set out there the areas that the framework is built around. So tackling detriment, preventing harm, supporting the local economy and promoting health and well-being. So rather than it being a league table format of performance, it simply collates all the information, so it amasses under different criteria exactly what the trading standard services across England and Wales have been doing in the space of a financial year. And as you can imagine, the net result is really impactful. SRS has contributed from day one, and I've done my part to encourage other local authorities in Wales to also input into this framework. And this last year, looking back at the 2020-21 financial year, we had 17 out of the 20 trading standard services actually contribute to the framework. And as a result of that, because of the really good uptake in Wales by trading standard services, we've been able to produce for the first time a standalone Wales only report on this data. So if members have got time to check through, the report isn't too long. Some really nice case studies in there, some of which are a number from SRS, but there's also an infographic which is a little bit more punchy, and it really gives some useful headline figures. Things like across Wales in 2020-21, £1 million of detriment was prevented, 1,000 scams victims were assisted, and 34,000 unsafe or non-compliant products were removed from the market. And then looking at the SRS contribution, again, really, really impressive. We have across Wales something like 28 years worth of prison sentences or suspended prison sentences are handed down. But when you compare that against the total prison sentences through SRS cases, then our cases contributed to 60% of that total across Wales. So really recommend a look through that report. It really sums up the worth of trading standards to everyday life. So not sure if there are any questions on that. Happy to take them at this point. Councillor
Mackey's got a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to just say, well done, really. I mean, excellent. I have read it. And yeah, I mean, some great results there. And I mean, you know, considering, you know, what you've all been going through in this pandemic as well, I think that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And, you know, everybody should be congratulated from, you know, top to bottom. Brilliant. Yeah, well done.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Norma. Eddie?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you can be reassured, Helen. We have read it, and it's good news stories. You know, we've talked about the challenges for the staff, but it's recognising what the services has achieved. And for me, it's broadcasting this across the authority as well. It's interesting. You know, we are a joint committee, and we, you know, it could be easily just kept within house, couldn't it? But I'm going to use the opportunity through the cabinet process and widen it out to the council members that the work that's being done on this, because sometimes, you know, it can be overlooked. But so that's how I think this can be utilised as well as. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Eddie makes a really good point. I think you know, after the May the 5th, I think it would be a good idea that all prosecutions are communicating with councillors in all three authorities. They get it eventually, but I think it'd be good to set up a system where we actually email them and say, okay, this is what's happened across the board. Helen, back to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Michael. I'm actually going to pass now to Will, and he'll take you from 2.16 in the report, which is an update on taxi licensing.
Thanks, Helen. So just a very brief update on a joint DVSA SRS operation in Cardiff that took place recently. So the DVSA, as is detailed in the report, regulate MOT testing stations in the main, and in part they wanted to undertake an operation in Cardiff due to concerns they had around a couple of businesses in the city. But it's obviously a useful opportunity for our officers to engage with them and to be present when they're pulling vehicles over. So it took place outside the Public Carriage Office, which is based in City Hall in Cardiff, and mainly looked at hackneys and private hire vehicles who had attended looking to relicense. So the headline results are in the report at 2.17. And do not make for reassuring reading, but obviously do emphasise the importance of the checks that were undertaken. So some of the headline points, 70% of the 41 vehicles that were stopped would have failed an MOT. Licensing officers, as part of their inspections, issued 29 stop notices. So that was on issues of roadworthiness and faults with disability access systems, for instance. The DVSA obviously have their own powers, issued 10 immediate prohibition notices and 31 delayed prohibition notices. And that was for a range of issues, ranging from suspension, steering, sensor faults, which is a new check that has come in with the MOT, and other issues. And I think one driver was actually issued with a £300 FPN for driving off when he was approached by a DVSA officer. So a few things I think this highlights. Firstly, the age of the fleet in Cardiff continues to give rise for concern, particularly hackney carriages, a large percentage of which are over 10 years old. Secondly, it illustrates the continued importance of regulatory enforcement work and particularly stakeholder engagement, because it was much easier to do this work with the DVSA because of the additional powers they have. And finally, in the next financial year, we will review the testing regime in Cardiff, to assess what improvements may be made. Something we've already discussed with Councillor Michael and Councillor Mackey, and we'll be looking to continue that conversation then in the coming year. So that's a quick roundup of the operation. I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
Yeah. Who we got? We got a hand up here. I can't. All I can see is initials. I think it's Councillor Thomas, and I think it's Councillor Lewis as well. So Councillor Thomas first, and then Lewis. Okay,
I'll go first on that. Just thinking about the testing regime. I know in the Vale we do our own tests in the Alps. Yeah. I think Cardiff. Did Cardiff use any? They can use any MOT station.
So a decision was taken pre-SRS several years ago that due to, I think they were operational difficulties at the time, but I couldn't swear to it, or any MOT testing station within the city of Cardiff could undertake the MOT test and the additional test that is required for taxis. So it used to be in-house. It was something that was run in tandem with Cardiff Bus, but is now any MOT testing station in the city.
So, and do you think that that's working as it should then? Is there anything better about the way it's done in the Vale or not?
I mean, you know, I would argue that on public safety grounds, in-house testing is a more robust method because there are no commercial interests involved. You know, I must stress we've no evidence that there's widespread fraud within the testing regime, but there certainly is. You have more control as a local authority when you have the ability to employ your own garage, your own staff to test the vehicles, and I think that does give comfort to members in the Vale and Bridgend, potentially in a way that isn't the case in Cardiff.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Will.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was going to mention to Will the fact that in licensing committee meetings, it's a bone of contention. The age of some applicants put in the age of the car of some applicants who are applying for licenses, and basically, there are quite a lot of councillors who think that if the taxi is over 5 years old, then they shouldn't be granted.
Yeah, I mean, we've recently gone through, haven't we, in Bridgend, an exercise looking at the age of vehicles and how the committee want to consider that. And I think, particularly in the context of Cardiff, the Hackney fleet is the area that gives us most cause for concern, and that isn't new. I know Councillor Mackey and Councillor Michael are aware of this. The age of and profile of the fleet in areas like Bridgend and the Vale is younger, and there aren't the same numbers of taxis. But certainly, I think the policy that was passed in Bridgend, for instance, in relation to age of vehicle upon first licensing, I thought was a happy medium between allowing the trade to have economic ability to purchase vehicles, whilst ensuring that the age of the taxi fleet is reasonable. But I think once having a policy, my view is always going to be, and I'm sure that's what the lawyers would tell you as well, is if you have a policy, you should obviously only step outside that in extraordinary circumstances. So I think the policy that exists and was recently renewed in the Vale and Bridgend is reasonable.
Thank you, Will.
I mean, we had a meeting last week, myself, Councillor Mackey, Councillor Hugh Thomas and others, with some members of the trade to discuss taxing issues in the city, and I made it quite clear then that if we come over the other side after May the 5th, this issue is top of my agenda, certainly, to have a look at what we're doing. We really need to get a grip with the electrification of the fleet. We need to get a grip, certainly, of the age of our fleet, which is continually aging over the last 3 or 4 years. It's got worse. So we made it very plain to the representatives of that body that we are in for discussions. We're happy to discuss with them, but decisions will be taken fairly quickly to move on. Otherwise, we're going to face an even bigger problem. So I accept that other councils do different. I personally think in-house testing is obviously better. We're in a good position in Cardiff now to actually deliver that. And it's one of the issues that we will be discussing once we get the election out of the way, hopefully in the right way. Councillor Mackie.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. You know, there's definitely work that needs to be done there. I mean, where it's been difficult is that the drivers themselves have had a terrible time throughout COVID, and the fleet has just got older and older, with no replacements really during that time, and no money from them to be able to do it. So, with some help from Welsh Government and hopefully some help as well that we're able to give from the council, we might be able to sort of assist some of them in getting new cars. But hello, but there's an awful lot we've got an awful lot of cars, an awful lot of drivers, and I think this is a big problem. So we're really going to have to get to grips with it. I think in the next term. Thanks.
Thanks, Norma. Ellen, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm actually going to pass now to Jason to take us through the next part of the report. You will all know Jason, and we're delighted that he has now taken up the role of operational manager, my current role, former role, and we're delighted to have Jason on board. So I'm going to pass you to Jason now to take you from 2.20 in the report on air quality.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Thanks for that. Just a quick overview of the 3 air quality reports that have all gone through each of the individual cabinet reporting processes. So starting with Bridgend, the 2021 annual progress report, it continues to highlight one area of concern in Bridgend, which is the Park Street air quality management area. And even with the impacts of COVID in 2020, there were still exceedances of the air quality objective for nitrogen dioxide throughout Park Street at a number of locations, and we are continuing to work on the air quality action plan to pursue reducing the NO2 concentrations in Park Street, and recently took a sort of update report to Bridgend Cabinet at the March Cabinet report. So we've had some preliminary results on some modelling of transportation measures that would be impacting Park Street, and the results of that was quite positive. We get good improvement on NO2 concentrations throughout most of the air quality management area on that. So the Cabinet has agreed that we will take a public consultation following the post-election period. And we will work with residents in the area to assess those measures in more detail and take views of any additional measures that need to be taken forward for the air quality action plan that will pursue compliance for the air quality management area. In Cardiff, again, the air quality action plan, the progress report for 2021 showed compliance for air quality objectives at the majority of the monitoring locations across Cardiff. That was really the impacts of the COVID period and the reductions of traffic across Cardiff. We've continued to work with Cardiff in delivering the Clean Air Plan to address the legal direction for the air quality issues that are faced on Castle Street, and work in 2021 through 22 has delivered a number of those key measures, namely the 36 electric buses that Cardiff Bus obtained through UK government funding. We've completed a bus retrofit programme of 49 buses, cleaning those buses to the latest emission standards. And there has been the launch of the taxi lease scheme and a further lease scheme with Cardiff Capital Region, where there is a 30-day try before you buy on the electric vehicles. There's been some further work on looking at Castle Street and the future of Castle Street, and we've been working with Welsh Government to identify what the permanent option of that is going to be, with an interim measure that was agreed with Cabinet to reintroduce traffic following COVID. And we're, as I said, we're working on some further assessment on that to deliver the permanent scheme, and working with Welsh Government on that and ensuring that compliance for NO2 is delivered on Castle Street and is maintained. In the Vale, again, that the 2021 annual progress report showed that there was no monitoring sites recorded across the authority above NO2 concentrations of 40, and monitoring has continued in the previous AQMA on Windsor Road, and again we've shown continued compliance in that area. So going forward, there's obviously further ongoing monitoring across all three local authority areas, and then the main focus currently is working with Bridgend on the Air Quality Action Plan and the continued work on the Clean Air Plan for Cardiff, really. So happy to take any questions that there may be on that work.
Thanks, Jason. Councillor Lewis, that an old hand or a new hand you got up? Okay, Councillor Mackie.
Yeah, good to see you sort of back, Jason, but not from losing from us. Yeah. Just on Castle Street, really. You know, I'm noticing that traffic is starting to build up now, not so much on Castle Street, but certainly building up from Cathedral Road back towards the castle. And that's almost at pre-pandemic sort of hold-ups again. And I was wondering, sort of, you know, what are the figures like around there? Are we testing around there now?
Yeah, we've got there's nitrogen darks, there's diffusion tubes on Cathedral Road, and there's additional sort of real-time monitors on Lower Cathedral Road as well, which we have in working with the transportation team at Cardiff Council. We're linking those to what they call the Stratos system, which is the traffic management sort of system, really, and starting to use there's some further testing on it, but we're going to start using the data from those monitors then to influence the traffic signals, just to show if we are getting sort of increase in concentrations, you know, that it can sort of speak to the traffic signalization, just to try and work out whether, you know, adjustments need to be made to get traffic moving and stuff. Off the top of my head, without looking at the data, I think the previous results for the closure of Cathedral Road in 2020 were, you know, we were compliant. I would have to look at the data and possibly come back, but I think, you know, at the minute on Cathedral Road itself, we weren't concerned. Once the traffic looks bad in peak hours, you know, throughout the averaging period, we weren't getting concentrations, but we can
Cathedral
definitely look
Road. I don't think Cathedral Road is too bad coming down. Old Cathedral Road coming out towards Castle Street, yeah, is bad now, and seems to be getting worse. And it's that bit from the Holiday Inn down towards Old Cathedral Road that is
right.
blocked.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's concerning, I think.
Yeah. Well, we've got monitoring locations across there. The real-time monitor on Castle Street isn't at that location. It's more sort of, you know, it's pretty much in front of the castle, really, on there. And the work we're working with Welsh Government is we've got to report that to them on a 3-monthly average. And
well, that's not bad. Yeah, that's doing
quick. So, but if there are sort of, you know, we've sort of set them different thresholds. If we do sort of encroach on one threshold, you know, there'll be additional measures that have to be looked at to, you know, increase, you know, further promote active travel and public travel. And then if we do breach another threshold, potentially, you know, there could be further mitigation that, you know, would have to be looked at in terms of further reducing the traffic around there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. Anybody else want to ask any questions on clean air strategies? No? Okay, over to you, Jace. Thank you.
So I think it's back to me now, Chair,
sorry,
for 2.25. Headed this animal welfare is actually something that we've spoken about on many occasions at Joint Committee previously, and it relates to illegal dog breeding or dog breeding in general. Welsh Government had become so concerned about the extent of illegal and legal dog breeding in Wales that in 2019 it prompted some work to establish exactly how enforcement and compliance activities could be supported in Wales. So as a result of that work, in 2021, the Wales Dog Breeding Project was launched, and this is something that is hosted by Monmouthshire County Council, and it's an all-Wales initiative which employs a number of regional licensing officers who act as an additional resource for local authorities in conducting inspections of premises, and clearly they will be building up expertise in this particular field moving forward. It's also hoped that through this work, a consistent set of licence conditions for dog breeding will be crafted to be applied across Wales and given greater certainty to legitimate breeders, but also a means of rooting out the illegal breeders, as we know they're causing us a huge problem. And on that subject, part of the work will be the development of a regional intelligence strategy looking at illegal dog breeding activity, and the means for that intelligence to be routed to the relevant local authority for investigation. And as you know, we've had a number of quite high profile illegal dog breeding cases in SRS. We are overwhelmed with information coming in about other concerns relating to illegal dog breeding, and we've introduced a mechanism now for triaging that information, some of which clearly is very urgent and needs pretty much investigation straight away. Other information we need to build on, and we've got a mechanism now for sort of separating that out and prioritising the investigations that we carry out. And then just going back to the Monmouthshire resource, the All Wales resource, there is the possibility that in time there will be a centralised, standardised administration process through a portal for licence applications relating to a range of different animal-related licensing activities. So I'll pause there, Chair, if there are any questions on that.
No, any questions on this? Nope, that's great, Helen. I have some concerns on this locally that I've made members aware, and I'm pretty sure we'll be revisiting this quicker than I thought. Eddie, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It's just that the recognition, it's, you know, this isn't something that is being forgotten about. There's been some, high profile cases, prosecution, which has brought more public interest into it, and it's good, it's going in the right direction. But recognising it's a big challenge ahead, isn't it? So, but credit to the staff again for doing what they're doing, and hopefully this national database will make it more difficult for those unscrupulous people.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. So that brings us to 2.28, which is the usual roundup of enforcement activity. And you'll find that information summarised in the table in Appendix 5. A very short appendix this time, just a quirk of the reporting period, only 3 cases included there. And by coincidence, one of those is one of the major illegal dog breeding cases that we were just speaking about. We've got a big rogue trader, rogue builder prosecution as the second entry in Appendix 5, and that resulted in 16 months imprisonment for that gentleman. And the third and final entry in Appendix 5 is a food hygiene prosecution of takeaway premises, and again a very good fine, £1,760. Plus costs to be paid. So small in number, but again, some quite impactful cases there. And of course, we do all that we can to publicise the outcomes of those higher profile cases, so that it acts as a deterrent for others, hopefully. So I can pause there if there are any questions on the enforcement activity.
Thanks, Alan. I think Councillor Mackey's had a new hand there.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
Again, well
Not a
done.
problem.
Again, it was just something silly, really. Water canister crackers. I just don't know what they are.
So yeah, so this is in the last part of that appendix, and this is goods that were forfeited. So they were seized from retail premises, and they are used with the NOS canisters. So these are the little gas canisters, which I think the legitimate use for them is in catering and food prep. However, they are abused because they can be used for other purposes to give someone a high. And the crackers are, I think, the things for activating these. And I think they sell balloons with them as well. And actually, I think a couple
Dave
of
did show us
ago,
Dave showed us how to do with them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what the crackers are.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah.
Thought you were missing out on your youth then, Norma.
Exactly. Yeah. I thought, yeah. Where can I get them? Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no truth that some of these were found outside Councillor Mackey's property, is there?
No. Okay. So, any more on that report?
So that brings us to the end of the report, Chair, if that is all the questions, and then that just brings us back to the recommendation, which is for Joint Committee to consider, note and agree the contents of this report.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Alan. Anyone dissent from the recommendations?
I'll move the recommendations.
All right, approve the recommendations. Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Alan. We move on to number 5 on the agenda, which is building up for the future. The report of the Public Protection Wales. Interesting report. Actually takes on some of the discussions we've been discussing over the last few years, especially with staff and retention. So to hand over the report on the future, I'll pass you to someone who did have a future once. Dave.
Yes, Chair, thank you. So, yeah, building for the future. Directors of Public Protection Wales, that is the group, that's me and my peers across Wales, the different Welsh authorities. As you say, the background of this report, 1.1 to 1.5, really just sets out why the report was written, and that my colleagues across Wales were having similar discussions with their elected members and committees and cabinet members about the challenges the service was facing, and those perhaps come under a more severe spotlight with the work around coronavirus. So the report, the key issues that come out of the report, and it is appended to here, is that public protection services, that's the loose term, but the regulatory service makes an important contribution to lots of local government priorities, as we've just seen now in the report you've just heard, and also to national priorities. Quite a number of the Welsh Government's flagship policies sit with us to deliver. There's an imperative that we try and get society back to normal, get people back into work, make the workplace a safe place, and ensure that the local economy recovers. That's one of our key aims in the SRS business plan, supporting the local economy. Key issue about joining things up. I have been working in partnership with different people for 30 plus years. This is probably the most powerful partnership I've ever been engaged in terms of elected members, public health officials, Welsh Government officials, all focusing on dealing with what was a pretty challenging time. The report says that expenditure is low and continues to fall, and that better funding is probably needed to facilitate a more effective service going forward. I don't often talk to you very much. When I do talk to you, it's something's gone wrong. I don't often talk to you about when things are right and operating as they should. And, you know, if you service your car regularly, your car won't break down. So if you invest in your car will continue to serve you. If you stop servicing it, it'll stop. And that is what's happening in some areas of Wales where public protection services haven't had the investment and have struggled to deliver some of the services. And then that's probably a consequential effect of not being able to recruit people, is that young people maybe can't see the future in public protection services as a career that they did when I joined some time ago. So the report really puts a number of recommendations to the Welsh Government. The report has travelled from the Directors of Public Protection Wales to the Welsh Local Government Association and to the Executive Committee, the 22 leaders. On the 28th of January, the 22 leaders received the report and endorsed its contents, and the WLGA are now in dialogue with Welsh Government through the ministerial routes. At the same time, my colleagues and I have been talking to directors, officials in the Welsh Government, deputy directors, flagging the report to them. And what's been really interesting is, as we've talked to them, is that they didn't realise that we worked with other directorates in the Welsh Government. They all sort of recognised health protection, but didn't necessarily recognise transport and housing and other places, and the work with the Chief Medical Officer. So the report recommends better dialogue, better coordination between local authorities and the Welsh Government. It recommends a public protection workforce creation. It recommends apprenticeships, and Helen has been at the heart of that, driving that forward, and is still in dialogue with the apprenticeship leads inside the Welsh Government. And really, it just is a call for action for the service. I think if investment isn't made now, I'm not sure that the service will be able to respond in 2 or 3 years should a similar challenge arise. You know, I think we've said throughout the last 2 years, the SRS officers have responded exceptionally well. That goes for colleagues across Wales. But that workforce now is very tired. It's an ageing workforce, so there are a significant number of people in the regulatory service discipline that are over 50. And now is a time to try and induct people in out of the colleges, but get more people into the colleges. The colleges are undersubscribed. Apprenticeships is an opportunity. So it's a call for action. I think, Chair, this report, I don't think there's anything in it that we have not told you over the last couple of years. The hope is that this lights a bit of a fire and that Helen and colleagues continue to put wood on that fire as we go forward.
Thanks, Dave. No, I agree with you. I mean, the report just highlights what we've been saying all along. And I think Welsh Government needs to recognise the issues, certainly over the last 2-3 years, that have come to the fore. And I'm just hoping that the discussions with WLGA and on ministerial level lead to the finance and the ability for us to actually get an apprenticeship system going and recognise as such that the people come straight from college to do that job. So I will I pass it on. Is there anybody else has anything to add to this? No. Yeah, Eddie.
Just support the report. It's excellent. It covers the concern, you know, the need for it, and also to put it in the finance is hard hitting, isn't it? You've got to invest, but certainly support the report, and glad that it's progressing in the way it is, particularly all council leaders involved with it and WLGA. So great work.
Thanks, Ed. As I said, it's just one of the important items to go on the list after the elections. I think it's sort of one of those things that needs to have a set change in the way we work. Okay, thanks for that, Dave. Anything else by anybody? Nope. Agenda item 6, any items that the chairman has decided are urgent? There are none. Part 2 is a public and press statement, not a problem there. And part 7, any items that the chairman has decided are urgent in part 2, there is nothing there. So just before we wrap it up, can I pay a personal tribute to young Dave. I call him young sometimes when he's not in my company. I don't embarrass him. I know it's difficult, but when SRS was first mooted all those years ago, there were lots of anguish cries from councillors. How is this going to work? You know, where are they going to be? Who's going to do X? Who's going to do Y? I can't see it happening. Too many, lots and lots of issues, and I think it's a tribute to Dave with the incredible work that he's done to bring this all together to where we now have a really settled service between the three councils that work, you know, flawlessly, work seamlessly across the three councils. You really would struggle to understand that, you know, the incubation and the birth of this service not that long ago. And I'll miss him, and I haven't got my fingers crossed when I see that. Honestly, a normal will back me on that one. I'm sure we'll discuss this, you know, slightly more better session next week, and I look forward to that. But I look forward to a couple of hours out with Dave as well, so we can have a nice chat offline. But I hope that I wish you a really good retirement. I'm not sure the application to join the Robbie Hood Club is going to come up, but I'd love to see a picture of you with green tights, but that's a different story. I won't say too much about that, not with all these people online. You never know what to. It's been recorded, as you say, it could be used in evidence against you one day. But look, Dave, honestly, thanks for the friendship, and thanks for the tremendous work you've done for Cardiff, the Vale and Bridgend. Guys, anything else by anybody?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just
with everything you said, Chairman?
Okay. Norma?
Yeah, definitely. You will be sorely missed, Dave. Yeah, and thank you for all the support you've given me. I mean, you know, yeah, you kept me on the straight and narrow. No, brilliant. Yeah.
Councillor Lewis, anything?
Yes, just to say all the very best for a long and happy retirement, Dave. Thoroughly enjoyed attending these meetings. As I said before, I haven't needed to say much because the reports are so thorough that it's been a pleasure to attend the meetings. I'd like to wish Helen and the staff all the best for the future. I'm sure there won't be any problem with them continuing the good work. I'd also like to wish all the best to the councillors who are standing in forthcoming elections, all the very best. And finally, I'd like to know, have any phone calls been received about rubbish on the field at the Principality Stadium on Saturday?
Yeah, that's it. We got enforcement looking at that one. Councillor Patel.
How can I follow that? I think Dave Lewis said most of what I wanted to say. I just wanted to put on record my thanks to Dave. I think I've asked some awkward questions, and I've also asked some probably naive questions as well, but thanks for bearing with me, and I really did appreciate working with you and the time you took to kind of teach us the ropes and the inside tip and sharing the gossip, which I'm going to miss. But Helen, you know, I like a bit of gossip, so the bar's set high. But yeah, I'm gonna miss working with you, Dave. And yeah, like David Lewis said, like you know, I think we've worked really well as a committee, and I hope to see everyone back after May.
Thank you, Dashina. Ed, you got your hand up there.
Yeah, I concur with what everybody said, and do you know what? We'll also miss Dave's sense of humour.
We got one.
That's what I was going to say.
He looks Mr. Grumpy, doesn't he? But no, he's got a great sense of humour. Thanks, Dave, for everything you've done.
Chair, can I make two responses? One, when you talked about tight green trousers, a number of members on the call, but just to assure everyone that one of my passions is archery, hence the Robin Hood reference. And just secondly, you know, a number of councillors have served on this joint committee, and across three councils, it's been an absolute pleasure to work with you. And I know the officers take great confidence and inspiration from the way that you work and lead us politically. And I have to say thank you for that. because a joint committee is not often the easiest thing to deal with, but it's been an absolute pleasure working with you and with the lead directors. And I think it, it reflects our relationship, doesn't it? It's been a good one.
That's true. Right, as they all say, we shall see you on the other side. But before that, I'll see you next Wednesday at Barry. Till then, everybody take care. All the best.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.